A Goldman Sachs analyst sat at both ends of a boardroom table, approved $141 million in payments to a company he secretly owned, and bought a 1,000-acre ranch with retirement money from 26,000 people who thought their savings were safe. Before this story is over, you'll learn what happens when $340,000 becomes $10,000. 3 cents on the dollar. His name is Bradley Heppner, 59 years old, Dallas, Texas, Goldman Sachs analyst, Kellogg MBA, former director at the MacArthur Foundation, managing a $3.3 billion endowment. On paper, he was one of the most credentialed financial minds in the country, but behind that resume was a scheme that would drain $1 billion from ordinary people and funnel it straight into his pocket. Here's how it worked. GWG Holdings was a publicly traded company on the NASDAQ. They sold something called L bonds, high-yield investments backed by life insurance policies. The pitch was simple. You invest your retirement savings. You earn a steady 8% return. The bonds are secured by real assets. It sounded safe, and for retirees looking for income, it sounded perfect. Around 40 broker-dealers across the country sold these L bonds, mostly to retirees, people who had saved their entire lives and were looking for something safer than the stock market. One broker put 96% of a client's entire net worth into GWG L bonds. 96% of everything they had. One couple in Ohio, Richard and Diane, both retired teachers, they invested their entire pension, $340,000, into GWG L bonds. Their broker told them it was safe, backed by real assets, paying 8%. They planned to use the interest to pay for their mortgage, their health care, and eventually, to help their grandchildren with college. By the time GWG collapsed, their $340,000 was worth $10,000. Richard told a reporter, "We did everything right our whole lives. We saved, we trusted the system, and one man took it all." In Arizona, a 71-year-old widow named Margaret invested her late husband's life insurance payout, $210,000, into GWG L bonds. Her financial advisor told her it was income she could count on. She got back $6,200. That was supposed to fund the rest of her life. By the time it was over, $1.6 billion had been raised from investors. But here's what those investors didn't know. The money stopped going where it was supposed to. Between 2018 and 2019, Heppner and his company Beneficient gained control of GWG's board. And the moment he had that power, everything changed. GWG stopped buying life insurance policies. The assets backing the bonds disappeared, but they kept selling L bonds. So where was the money going? Straight into Beneficient, Heppner's private company. He didn't do it alone. Ben Butel, a former GWG executive and Beneficient insider, helped structure the transactions that moved investor money out of GWG. Butel signed off on paperwork. He coordinated transfers. He was the second pair of hands Heppner needed to make it work. But Heppner needed a way to move the money without the rest of the board catching on. So he created a fake company. He made up a debt of $141 million, a debt that didn't exist, owed to a company he secretly controlled. Then he went to GWG's board and said, "We owe this company $141 million. We need to pay them." The board approved it. They didn't know the company was his. They didn't know the debt was fake. And Heppner was sitting at both ends of the table, approving payments to himself. $300 million flowed from GWG to Beneficient, and more than $150 million ended up in Heppner's personal accounts. Then he went shopping. $40 million on his Dallas mansion and a 1,000-acre ranch in East Texas, a property called Bradley Oaks Ranch, north of Palestine, Texas. 1,000 acres of land, paid for with retirement money. $10 million on private aviation and credit card debt. $500,000 on jewelry. $20 million on tax bills from income he never should have had. All of it funded by retirement savings from 26,000 people who trusted a NASDAQ-listed company. Now here's something most people don't understand about how this kind of fraud survives for years. When auditors came asking questions, Heppner didn't just lie. He fabricated board meeting minutes. He backdated documents from 2019. He altered records retroactively to make it look like the board had approved transactions that were never properly disclosed. He created false records for the auditors to review. And when the SEC opened an investigation in October 2020, He didn't stop. He altered documents during the investigation itself. The paperwork looked legitimate. The transactions technically happened. The numbers added up on paper. It was the independence that was fabricated. And because the auditors trusted the paperwork, GWG's public SEC filings were tainted. Every quarterly report, every annual filing, built on fabricated records, and nobody flagged it. Meanwhile, Heppner was building something even more audacious. In April 2021, Beneficient obtained a first-of-its-kind bank charter in Kansas, a TFE charter, the only one in the entire country. Beneficient allies donated heavily to Kansas politicians, $15,000 to the Democratic State Party, $15,000 to the Republican State Party, $30,000 to the Democratic governor's re-election, $24,000 to the Republican Attorney General candidate. Both sides covered, and Beneficient got its bank charter, while its founder was under federal investigation, until the money ran out. On January 15, 2022, GWG missed a $10.35 million interest payment and a $3.25 million principal payment. The checks just stopped. 3 months later, GWG filed for Chapter 11 bankruptcy. 26,000 bondholders left holding paper worth 3 cents on the dollar. $1,000 invested returned $31.48. The total loss, $1 billion. Gone. Retirement accounts wiped out. College funds destroyed. Life savings reduced to pennies. Creditors in the bankruptcy called it a classic Ponzi scheme. And here's what makes this case impossible to forget. Heppner didn't just steal from a company. He stole from a company that was stealing from retirees. GWG was selling bonds backed by assets that no longer existed. The life insurance policies were gone. The money was flowing to Beneficient, and Beneficient was flowing it to Heppner. 3 layers of extraction, and at the bottom of that chain, 26,000 ordinary Americans watching their retirement accounts go to zero. On November 4, 2025, the indictment was unsealed. Bradley Heppner was charged with 5 federal counts: securities fraud, wire fraud, conspiracy to commit securities and wire fraud, false statements to auditors, falsification of records. The U.S. Attorney said, Heppner abused his role as a public company executive to loot the company and funnel money into his own pockets. He pleaded not guilty, released on a $25 million bond, secured by 5 properties in Texas and Kansas. His passport was surrendered. His trial is set for April 2026, before Judge Jed Rakoff, in the Southern District of New York. But here's the question this case leaves behind. How did 40 broker-dealers sell $1.6 billion in high-risk bonds to retirees, and nobody stopped it? The bonds weren't rated, no credit agency touched them, and FINRA didn't act until after the collapse. Some brokers have been fined. One was suspended for 5 months. But for 26,000 bondholders, those fines mean nothing. Their money is gone. And this is Bradley Heppner, a Goldman Sachs trained, Kellogg educated, MacArthur Foundation credentialed executive who built $1 billion house of cards on the retirement savings of ordinary Americans. He didn't need to hack anything. He didn't need to forge a single signature. He just needed a shell company, a boardroom seat, and a system that trusted the paperwork. Subscribe for new case every day at The Reckoning Files.